Hi, hello, welcome. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Christine, and if you're returning, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. I want to give a quick little shout out here at the beginning. I am so happy to say that I have reached 100 subscribers, and I am so grateful for everyone who has clicked on these videos, enjoyed them, and decided to subscribe to my channel. Today, if you are like me, you're really feeling it. There's a lot happening right now, and one of the best ways to escape is by getting lost in a book. And maybe you're wondering where to begin. Maybe you haven't read in a while, or you've had a reading slump, and you just really want something to get you back into reading. So I'm here today to share 10 books with you that I think will help you get back into reading, escape that reading slump, and just start turning the pages again. I have a whole bundle of books here. I picked out 10 books that I think are some great books to get back into reading. They're not too long, not too short, and I pulled from a lot of different genres. So I'm going to start off with the books that I have here, and then in the second half I'll talk about the books that I don't own the physical copies, or my copies are out for being borrowed. I'm going to start with a more YA/middle grade, and this is a graphic novel. It is called The Moth Keeper by Kay O'Neill. I think that this book could definitely help anyone get out of a reading slump or get back into reading, because there is just beautiful artwork. It's a really cute story of our main character who has to take on the responsibility of being a moth keeper, which is a great honor and duty in her village. It is a really, really beautiful story, and I remember reading this pretty quickly. I love the artwork. Like, look how beautiful this is. So I definitely recommend picking up The Moth Keeper by Kay O'Neill. Just, again, absolutely gorgeous. Next up on my pile here, I have One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is a sapphic romance novel that also has a sci-fi element to it. So if you are into romance or sci-fi or both, this is definitely a book to help you get out of a reading slump or get back into reading. We have two characters who meet on the Q train in New York City, and over time we realize that one of these characters is stuck in a different time. So as their love story unfolds, they also have to figure out how to get in the same time as each other. So really interesting. I remember not realizing this was sci-fi when I read it, and I think that the sci-fi element just helps the plot move along so quickly and keep you really interested. Another book that I think could help someone get back into reading is Starling House. This is by Alex E. Harrow, and this is more of a gothic, atmospheric, spooky book. It takes place in a small town, pretty rural, pretty desolate, with our main character who decides to go clean at the Starling House, which is a mysterious mansion where no one really wants to go. The owner of the mansion is a grumpy man who doesn't really talk to anyone, and we discover the secrets of the shadows and of the Starling House. So highly recommend this one. This was one of my favorite books that I read in 2023. Just absolutely amazing. I obsessed with Starling House. A little less spooky and dark, I have What Lies in the Woods. This is by Kate Alice Marshall, and this is a thriller. What Lies in the Woods is about three friends who, when they are children, one of their friends is attacked and murdered, and the girls make up a story about who they think did it and send the wrong people, or send the wrong person, to prison, and they are now ready to tell the truth, especially after another goes missing decades later. So this is a very quick, page-turning thriller. I highly recommend it. Is it a 5-star thriller? No. But is it going to be a quick, fun, and fast read? Absolutely. For those of us who want something cozy, something warm, something that feels like a hot mug of tea or a cozy hug, I highly recommend picking up The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Long. I read this in November and I just absolutely loved the found family. I loved their cozy adventure of telling fortunes and baking cookies and bread and just picking up a ragtag group of people who go on a quest together to find one of the characters' missing daughters. And there was just so much comfort in these pages, and I know right now something we all could really use is a small dose of comfort, or really a big dose of comfort. So if you are looking for a hug in a book, I highly recommend picking up The Teller of Small Fortunes to help you break out of that reading slump, or to get back into reading if it's something that you've been away from for a while. The last book pulled off of my shelf that I would recommend to anyone who wants to get back into reading, is looking for an incredible story, I would absolutely recommend Homeseeking by Carissa Chen. This book is a little longer, so that can be intimidating if you haven't read in a while or if you're coming out of a reading slump, but I promise that this book did not feel like 500 pages. I read this book so quickly. I was just enamored with the writing, with the characters, with the element of time and memory, and how we trace the history of our two characters from the past to the present and from the present to the past in alternating perspectives. This is a beautiful story of migration, of change, of the choices we make and how that impacts our life, and how there can be invisible strings that pull us apart and together throughout our life. So absolutely 100% pick up this book, because I do not have enough good things to say about this book and how just absolutely beautiful it is. I think this is one of my favorite books I've read in a very, very long time. Talk about some books that I don't have here with me today, but are also some really great books to help you get back into reading. One book that helped me a lot get back into reading when I was going through a bit of a reading slump when I was moving is The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. This book is about a woman who everyone in her village believes that she has murdered her husband. And to be fair, her husband's kind of an asshole. Turns out, no, that's a spoiler, not gonna say anything, but the women in this village who also hate their husbands come to her to have her help them murder their husbands. And she has to play along with it because everyone just believes this, and they've kind of made her the village outcast. So these men just start dropping like flies in the most absurd ways because this woman does not know what she's doing. It takes place in a rural village in India, so we get a little bit of insight into life in a rural village. The setting is so well described, it is like being there. The characters are hilarious and lovable, and while this plot sounds like maybe it's a little grim, it is such a fun story. I did not want to put it down. I raced through this book from the library, and it is probably one of those books I would love to have on my shelf one day because it was such a fun book and I would love to read it again. Another book that is both light and funny that is wonderful for getting back into reading is another Casey McQuiston book, and one that I read just last year, and this is The Pairing. It is one of her newest books, I think her newest book actually, and it is a queer story of a couple that breaks up and they are supposed to go on a food and wine tour together. And it turns out that their rescheduled date, they both just so happen to schedule the same trip again. So they have to go on this trip together after being broken up and not seeing each other for a while. And there are just such rich descriptions of the food and the wine, the cities, the sounds and the smells. And these two characters essentially go on to have a sex competition of who can sleep with more people on this trip. As they slowly come back together, it was just so good. It's such a fun queer love story. Both the main characters are queer, so there's just like a lot of gay happiness, gay joy, queer joy just happening throughout this book, and it was just so much fun. I currently have my copy out on loan to a friend, but I am so excited to recommend you this book because it, again, is a little on the longer side, but I found that it was very easy to get through. We spend just a few chapters in each city following the shenanigans of our two main characters. Switching back here to a little bit darker, a little heavier, a really, really good book that I devoured a few years ago is called My Dark Vanessa. I have heard people talk about this book. It is by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This one, it can be triggering. Definitely read your trigger warnings. It is told from the perspective of a woman who is reflecting back on her past and realizing that she was groomed by her high school teacher. And it goes back and forth between past and present because in the present there are more accusations leveled against him. There are more accusations leveled against him. So we are going back and forth from her experiences as a teenager who is being groomed by her teacher and what she is dealing with today as a result of this horrible experience. It is such a well-written book. It really dives into the mindset of someone who has experienced this, and I think that this is a really great book, and it's difficult. There are parts that are very hard to get through, but overall, like, the pacing is so good, the characters are very well written, and they're so complex, especially our main character, Vanessa. The characters are just so complex, especially our main character, who we are following her experience as both a teenager and as an adult. And last, I wanted to include just one nonfiction book that I think could help someone get back into reading if nonfiction is a little bit more your speed, and that is Word Slut by Amanda Montell. I would also recommend Cultish, depending on what you're more interested in. But these are both books about linguistics and language and how the language that is used impacts the listener, our social experiences. In Word Slut, it talks a lot about the way that language is gendered, communication styles, and how our language has evolved and how misogyny shapes language. Cultish is about the language of cults and how cult language can be found in a lot of different areas of life, including like health and fitness. Language is used to create in-groups and out-groups, and how language can be leveraged against people to keep them kind of trapped in situations and maybe not even realize that what they're experiencing is a bit cultish. So those are my recommendations for books to get back into reading. I hope you enjoyed this video today, and if you've read any of these books and have your own thoughts on them, I'd love to hear them in the comments. What are some of your favorite books to get back into?